Coming up, State of Business, sponsored by
Meet your work and learn targets. Log on to My SLT app to activate.
IWS Aviation.
Hello there, you're watching our television. This is State of Business. I am Pumutha Katugampala. Our top stories. Government commences debt restructuring discussions. Plantation and tourism sectors show positive growth. Welcome back. Now let's have a detailed look at the stories. Now, a major survey from Microsoft shows that bosses and workers fundamentally disagree about productivity when working from home. Bosses worry about whether working from home is as productive as being in the office. While 87% of workers felt they worked as or more efficiently from home, 80% of managers disagreed. The survey questioned more than 20,000 staff across 11 countries. Microsoft Chief Executive Satya Nadella, speaking to Foreign News, says this tension needed to be resolved as workplaces were unlikely to ever return to pre-pandemic work habits. He maintains that employers have to get past what we describe as productivity paranoia because all of the data shows that over 80% of employees feel that they are very productive while except their management thinks that they are not productive. This, according to the Microsoft Chief Executive, means there is a real disconnect in terms of the expectations and what they feel. Both Nadella and Ryan Rollansky, the boss of Microsoft-owned LinkedIn, said employers were grappling with perhaps the biggest shift in working patterns in history. The number of fully remote jobs advertised on LinkedIn soared during the pandemic, but Rollansky said data suggested that type of role might have peaked. The LinkedIn boss highlights that of some 14 or 15 million job listings that are typically live on LinkedIn, about 2% of those involved remote work before the pandemic. Some months ago, that stood at 20%, and it has since come down to 15% this month. Microsoft employees can work from home up to 50% of the time as standard. More than that requires management approval or a move to part-time working. Some companies have struggled to impose new working arrangements and expectations. There has been resistance to calls at Apple to return to the office after 3 days a week from September, while Tesla boss Elon Musk has demanded 40 hours a week in the office. An unprecedented number of people have also changed jobs since the start of the pandemic. A phenomenon Microsoft has dubbed the Great Reshuffle sees workers born after 1997 or Generation Z nearly twice as likely to switch jobs. By 2030, Generation Z will make up about 30% of the entire workforce, so managers need to understand them, according to LinkedIn's boss. Given these findings, companies will have to adapt to changing workforce expectations or face the prospect hiring subpar employees and having to grapple with high turnover and low productivity, eventually leading these organizations to fade into oblivion. Meanwhile, the initial discussions regarding debt restructuring have placed locally denominated debt within the remit of instruments that may get adjusted to boost the economy. Sri Lanka has in record time secured a staff-level agreement with IMF for the disbursement of $2.9 billion in the form of an extended fund facility. Given assurances made by foreign embassies, Sri Lanka is also expected to receive considerable financing from bilateral creditors. The country's major bilateral creditors, China, Japan and India, have already entered into fresh credit arrangements and have signaled a willingness to venture into new financing arrangements for major capital expenditure projects. This was disclosed to creditors in a public call organized by Clifford Chance, the Minister of Finance, and the Central Bank on the 23rd of September. China has signaled a willingness to roll over all credit, allowing the country to organize itself to make payments. India has signaled a desire to create more linkages in the spheres of energy and logistics infrastructure for which it will provide financing or investment. Japan has shown interest in sharing its technological know-how in the mass transit sphere and further support for the port infrastructure through the Asian Development Bank. The government has also begun an identification of holders of notes issued or guaranteed by Sri Lanka. The principal amount outstanding of these notes is $12.72 billion. It has appointed Moro Sodali, a leading provider of strategic advice and shareholder services to corporate clients around the world, as identification agent to compile a list of holders who exist in this process. The government is requesting the holders or their respective intermediaries to disclose their identities and holdings of the notes. 11 issues of notes worth $12.55 billion due from 2022 and 2030 are listed, and the other is $175 million bond of Sri Lankan Airlines due in 2024 and guaranteed by the government. The exercise announced on Friday will also help improve communication with holders. Any information gathered through this process will be kept strictly confidential for use by the Republic and its advisors. Now, even with a reduced crop, Sri Lanka has managed to earn $882 million from tea exports in the first 8 months of the year. This was revealed by Chairman of the Sri Lanka Tea Board Niraj Dumel at the 168th AGM of the Planters Association of Ceylon. During the first 7 months, rubber, coconut and export agriculture has mustered $600 million, $590 million and 250 million rupees respectively, he said. However, Dumel said that the $882 million talked about was the country's noble $100 to $110 million per month income even in previous years. The Sri Lanka Tea Board chairman holds that the time has come for Sri Lanka to get back producing BOH tea, and that too of better quality. The mail stresses that the Sri Lankan tea industry was under severe threat, as India is the largest tea producer in the world, accounting for almost 25% of the total market. Between China and India, they account for almost 70% of the global tea market, and Sri Lanka has fallen below 5%. He maintains that the crop volume is low, therefore the availability of different types of tea which have better options is diminishing. He therefore requested the targeting of a better leaf to make sure that Ceylon tea regained what it was known for back in the 60s, 70s and even the 80s. The chairman calls on industry stakeholders to engage with others in the value chain who have the know-how to bring about a bright future for Sri Lanka. Meanwhile, Chairman of the Planters Association of Ceylon, Sena Kalavathegama, urges planters to continuously re-evaluate land use policy for maximum use. The plantation sector was also faced with a shortage of labour, and for the RPC sector, the workforce has reduced to approximately 115,000. Kalavathegama holds that every viable measure must be taken to reverse migration of labour from the plantation sector, noting that the daily wage system that has been in place since the colonial era was simply not suited for this task. He also highlighted the fact that Sri Lanka imports 229,000 metric tons of edible oil for domestic use, and questioned those who oppose oil palm cultivation in Sri Lanka, as producing palm oil in Sri Lanka conserves foreign currency. See you soon with more stories after this short commercial break.
Take it everywhere with S30 Go. Data Ball 1, Data Ball 1.
A non-stop journey with Data Ball 1 from SLT Mobitel Home Broadband.
Welcome back. You're watching State of Business. Now, Sri Lanka Tourism today kicked off a series of roadshows in select cities of India in a bid to woo more visitors and fast-track revival of industry battered by crisis since 2019. Sri Lanka Tourism Promotion Bureau maintains that the main purpose of hosting these roadshows is to promote Sri Lanka as an attractive tourism destination across India, as it has been extremely supportive in Sri Lanka regaining lost momentum both post-pandemic and the recent economic downturn. It said Sri Lanka is witnessing a considerable increase in tourist arrivals, with India leading the way and securing the #1 position. The event also focuses on promoting a myriad of tourism experiences while focusing on converting potential travelers to make booking, and highlight the positive message that Sri Lanka is open for leisure, business and meetings, incentives, conferences and exhibitions or MICE tourism. The target audience at these roadshows will be tour operators, media, key influencers, corporates, and trade associations and key tourism industry stakeholders in India. These are then expected to carry the message that Sri Lanka is not only one of the most beautiful countries, but is also safe and secure, adhering to all the necessary health and safety guidelines. Many industry stakeholders are supporting this endeavour, including Sri Lankan Airlines and MasterCard. Each roadshow will include B2B sessions facilitating numerous discussions, followed by an evening networking event which will also help to improve business partnerships. During the roadshows, Minister Fernando is expected to meet several high-profile business leaders, tourism stakeholders and corporates while engaging in several media interviews with leading Indian media houses. India has generated over 80,000 tourist arrivals so far and is expected to double these numbers by 2023. Sri Lanka Tourism Promotion Bureau expects these roadshows will add more value in creating a positive mindset regarding Sri Lanka and its diversity of attractions. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena maintains that Sri Lanka highly valued China's continuous support to Sri Lanka. He said this when Chinese Ambassador to Sri Lanka Ki Shenghong recently met him at Temple Trees. Ambassador Ki Shenghong said that China has offered an additional $400,000 in food and other humanitarian assistance to Sri Lanka and requested the Prime Minister to provide a list of immediate requirements. Prime Minister thanked him for the assistance provided by China to alleviate the current economic crisis in Sri Lanka. The Prime Minister also mentioned the Chinese stand in support of Sri Lanka's sovereignty at the international forums including the UNHRC. The importance of further strengthening the existing economic cooperation between China and Sri Lanka in the face of the current economic crisis was emphasized during the meeting. The Prime Minister said Sri Lanka would welcome direct private investment as well as investment in agriculture, renewable energy, irrigation and water supply sectors to provide long-term solutions to economic issues. The Chinese ambassador expressed satisfaction with Sri Lanka's discussions with the International Monetary Fund as China is also a member of the IMF. The ambassador assured that China would support Sri Lanka during the meeting of the IMF Board of Directors. Sri Lanka and China on Friday dismissed the often-cited debt trap narrative by Western nations and others who are influenced by them. The matter came up for discussion during a meeting between Foreign Minister Ali Sabri and his counterpart Wang Yi on the sidelines of the 77th session of the UN General Assembly in New York. The two sides will speed up the negotiation process and strive for an early conclusion of a free trade agreement, thereby boosting the confidence in stabilizing the expectations for their economic and trade cooperation. Meanwhile, the government issued an extraordinary gazette declaring several areas as high security zones in Colombo. These high security zones include the Parliament, Supreme Court, High Court and Magistrate Court in Colombo, Attorney General's Department, Presidential Secretariat, President's House. Also include are the headquarters of the Navy, Air Force and Police, Minister of Defence, Sri Lanka Army Headquarters in Akuregoda, Prime Minister's Office, Temple Trees, official residences of Defence Secretaries and Commanders of Tri-Forces and IGP. The related Gazette notification has been issued on 16 September with the signature of President Ranil Wickremesinghe, who is also the Defence Minister. As per the notification, the Defence Secretary will be the competent authority for the implementation of the orders. He is also authorized to make provisions to the regulation of certain activities within the zones based on security situations or during special occasions. The Gazette notification also states that unless a prior written permission of the IGP or Senior Deputy IGP in charge of the Western Province is obtained, no person shall conduct or hold a public gathering or procession whatsoever on a road, ground, shore or other open area situated within the high security zones. The notification adds that no person shall perform construction of a building, a temporary or permanent construction or an excavation within the high security zones unless a permit from the competent authority is obtained for the said purpose. This is in addition to the legal requirements which should be fulfilled by the person who intends to perform the said construction of a building, a temporary or permanent construction, or an excavation. In response to this, the Human Rights Commission of Sri Lanka met today to discuss the Gazette notification. Several parties, including the Bar Association of Sri Lanka and the Centre for Policy Alternatives, have already expressed concern in relation to its legitimacy. Stay tuned for stock updates.
Meet your work and learn targets. Log on to my SLT app to activate.
More data with low latency. Data Bowl 1, data Bowl 1.
A non-stop journey with Data Bowl 1 from SLT Mobitel Home Broadband.
Welcome back. You're watching State of Business and now stock updates. Trading at Colombo Stock Exchange ended on negative notes today. The all-share price index dropped 120.59 points to close at 9,844.21, and the S&P 20 dropped 34.79 points to close at 3,168.22. The turnover was 4.5 billion rupees and over 121 million shares were traded. Coming up next are Forex rates. Well, that's a wrap from today's edition of State of Business. See you tomorrow with State of Business at 7:45 p.m. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
State of Business was sponsored by
Meet your work and learn targets. Log on to my SLT app to activate.
Star, Seat out.
IWS Aviation.